Hello, dear subscribers. Many people today want to read the Bible. The first chapter of the Bible, Genesis, explains the creation of heaven and earth and the origin of mankind. But a few chapters later, genealogy appears. It lists the names of people, the ages at which they had sons, and the ages at which they lived. When Adam had lived 130 years, he had a son in his own likeness, in his own image, and he named him Seth. After Seth was born, Adam lived 800 years and had other sons and daughters. Altogether, Adam lived 930 years, and then he died. And Seth begot Enosh, and Enosh begot Canaan, and Canaan begot Mahalalel. These are the 10 generations recorded. In the days of old, it was amazing that people's ages were recorded in detail. But because there were so many numbers coming out, it became boring, and I ended up closing the Bible. I had to get over this mountain to continue reading. So how can I finish reading the Bible? A book that delves into the difficult genealogy of Genesis has appeared, the first volume of the History of Redemption series, the Genesis Genealogies. This book clearly explains the chronology of the genealogy in Genesis. It was first written in Korean and has been translated into languages around the world, allowing many people to learn about God's plan of redemption revealed in the genealogy through this book. The author of Genesis is known as Moses. This Moses was a leader sent by God when the Israelites left Egypt. God wanted to lead the Israelites, the descendants of Abraham, to the land of Canaan. However, during their journey through the wilderness at Kadesh Barnea, the Israelites failed to believe in God's promise and rebelled. God was angry and made them wander in the wilderness for 40 years. And the first generation died before entering the land of Canaan. Even Moses is now standing on the plains of Moab, facing death.
והיה שם בך לעד, כי אנוכי ידעתי את מרייך, ואת עורפך הקשה, הן בעודני חי עמכם היום, ממרים הייתם עם אדוני, ואף כי אחרי מותי.
Moses proclaimed a testament-like message with the hope that the second generation of the Exodus would walk the path of faith even after entering the land of Canaan. That message is Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy is divided into 3 parts. First, reflecting on the past, looking back at all of the events the Israelites have gone through since the Exodus. Second, reaffirming the law. After 40 years, Moses reminds the people of the law and stresses the importance of remembering God's words. Third, looking to the future. Moses prophesies about what the Israelites will face and prepares them for the challenges ahead. And Moses composes a song so that he would not forget all these words.
כתבו לכם את השירה הזאת, ולמדה את בני ישראל, שימה בפיהם. למען תהיה לי השירה הזאת לעד בבני ישראל.
This song is Deuteronomy 32. God warns that the Israelites will betray him and fall into corruption in the future. However, because God still loves them, he gives them 3 commandments as a way to overcome the crisis. This commandment is Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 7. Remember the days of old. Consider the years of all generations. Ask your father. The first commandment is, remember the days of old. The days of old does not simply mean the past. It is the history of the fulfillment of the promises God made. Up until now, the people of Israel have had the following history: the fall of Adam and the unbelief of Cain's line, the sin and judgment during Noah's time, human pride at the Tower of Babel, the covenant of the torch with Abraham, the Israelites' slavery in Egypt and the Exodus, the suffering and trials during the 40 years in the wilderness. Even through all these sins, God continually saved his people. The history of his deep love and tears is what is meant by the days of old. And God said, remember. Because people who easily forget the times of their suffering will suffer even more than before. God gave them several anniversaries and memorials so that they would not forget. The three major feasts of Passover, the Feast of Weeks, and the Feast of the Tabernacles, as well as commemorative days such as the Sabbath. Objects like the jar of manna, the 2 stone tablets, Aaron's staff, and the bronze serpent in the wilderness, and monuments such as the 12 stone monuments at the crossing of the Jordan River played a role in helping Israel remember God's salvation history and not lose the path of faith. The second command is, consider the years of all generations. The years of all generations go beyond all times and refer to the more specific redemptive plan of God that has been worked out by generations. The genealogy is the most essential and condensed record of the redemptive plan of each generation. Through the genealogy of Genesis, God has focused attention on the steps of the generations and their years. Genesis chapter 5 contains the genealogy of 10 generations from Adam to Noah, and Genesis chapter 11 contains the genealogy of 10 generations from Shem to Abraham. Through the names of the 20 patriarchs, the ages at which the sons were born, and the years they lived, we can learn how each generation passed on their faith and lived. We can also learn that 2,300 years passed from the first person in Genesis, Adam, to the last person, Joseph. The years from the Exodus to Solomon are also given. This is because it says that the construction of Solomon's temple began 480 years after the Exodus. It is known that Solomon became king in 970 BC, so the 4th year of Solomon's reign would be 966 BC. If we go back 480 years from this year, we can see that the year of the Exodus was 1446 BC. It is known that Solomon became king in 970 BC, so the 4th year of Solomon's reign would be 966 BC. If we go back 480 years from this year, we can see that the year of the Exodus was 1446 BC. It shows that the Bible is not a myth or a legend, but a real history with accurate dates. To consider isn't simply about recalling the past. It means to deeply observe, understand, and discern that era of history. Even if there is no hope in the reality to come, if we consider God's covenant and the history of his accomplishments, we will not lose hope. The third command is, ask your father and your elders. Father and elders refer to the leaders and ancestors of faith who led each era. God gave spiritual authority to these leaders, and whenever the people faced difficulties, he told them to ask these people. When they entered Canaan and lived there, he told them to ask their fathers and elders without hesitation when great confusion in faith arose. Ask does not simply mean asking questions, but rather asking with all of one's might, like a beggar begging and pleading. He told us to actively strive to learn the great things God had done. When the kings of Israel encountered problems they could not solve on their own, they asked God and received answers through God's men. Fathers and elders have disappeared from history, but in the Bible, they are still alive and answering their descendants. The words that Moses proclaimed on the plains of Moab are also promises to us now, even though we were not there at that time. Moses said, "Now, not with you alone am I making this covenant and this oath, but both with those who stand here with us today and with those who are not with us here today." We are His own people, saved by God. Originally, we were humans who could not help but die because of sin, but God decided to save us through Jesus before the creation of the world. Jesus achieved redemption by paying the price for sin with His life on the cross. First Peter 1:18 says this, "For you know that it was not with perishable things such as silver or gold that you were redeemed from the empty way of life handed down to you from your forefathers, but with the precious blood of Christ, a lamb without blemish or defect." Even now, God is showing us the administration of God in managing the world through the church and Christ. When we receive the words of Moses as the voice given today, we will be able to discover the wisdom hidden in the genealogies and teach it to our descendants. Then we will be able to become the main character who finally enters the land of Canaan and enjoys rest as Moses had wished.